Are you ready?
Yeah.
3, 2.
Which camera?
The one on the saw stop. You're live.
Hi, folks. Welcome. Welcome to our Saturday Night Live. Topic tonight is shooting boards. We'll make introductions as time goes. Frick, got a question?
Sure. Peter from the USA.
Hey, Peter.
I was looking into specialty steel blades for my shooting board. Do you think it's worth paying more for a Magna Cut blade for my shooting board?
A Magna Cut blade?
It says Lake Erie Tools.
Is that the ones we've... If you know how to sharpen, if you sharpen freehand the way I teach, it takes 32 seconds to do it. I suppose it takes you a minute by the time you take it out, sharpen it, and put it back. So, based on the speed with which you can resharpen, how much longer would a blade need to hold an edge in order to make it worthwhile? And I don't think there is a blade out there that really justifies that. Now, the original blade in most Stanley planes, which is so thin that it is hard to sharpen, I think you benefit from beefing that up because it silences the blade. You don't have the vibration issue. But I think any any premium blade that's thick would be an upgrade on your old thin Stanleys, but I don't think there's one that's going to be that much better than another. Not one that you can really measure. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Ken Cross in Mobile, Alabama.
Ken in Mobile, Alabama?
Correct.
Been there.
He says, being a new hobbyist woodworker, what size shooting board should I construct?
Well, I've got a 24-inch here. This is 18, although it's wait a minute, I got an 18. I've got an 18 right in here somewhere. Let me grab it. I was repairing it. Jake, where's that? There's an 18-inch shooting board around here somewhere that I was fixing. Do you remember where it went? There it is right there. I got it. So here's the 18. So the answer is going to be one of these two. And I'll tell you whatever I can tell you. I use my 5.5 as my shooting board plane. So we sell an awful lot of 18s. But I would take a 24 for the simple reason that you have more capacity. So really, you don't want to come back much farther than that. So your capacity in terms of width, now that means you're shooting a 15.5-inch wide board, which may be very rare. But a lot of times I use it to do the edge as well. So that's far more in keeping. So on this one, I'm going to have a capacity of at least 15 inches. On this one, that's cut down to 9.5 inches. So I would, and then considering all things, it is a bit of a pain, and I do it multiple times a day to lift this just because of the weight of it. I guess there's not that much of a difference, but it's a little bit longer, so it's a little more awkward to move around, but I would still go with the 24. Make it 24 and increase your capacity. It's not like you're having to reach way out, so that's still in a comfortable spot. I would do the 24. Next, Rick.
Next one comes from John K. in Longwood, Florida.
John in Longwood, Florida. Anywhere in Florida sounds good.
Yes, sir. Will you be making / selling a vertical miter shooting board that you just did a YouTube video on?
Yes. Yes, I don't know when, but we kind of have to catch up with We just launched benches, and that's taking a lot of our resources in terms of man hours. So it's on the radar screen though, because I really like the way it turns out, and that's a big kudos to Luther. It was his idea to do it. So at some point, stay tuned. Next, Rick.
Next one comes from Dan C. in Canton, Ohio.
Dan?
Yep.
Oh, the C was the last name?
Yep. He's from Canton, Ohio.
Hey, Dan.
Is it possible to design a variable angle shooting board?
Well, it is, and if you look at this one, just a second, let me just grab a piece of paper towel. Say something, Jake. Shoot.
I don't
Blow
know
my
what he wants
nose.
me to say.
Use some toilet paper. Bruce just took a whole lot to roll on. I was telling him
Frick, what's he going to get?
the other moose uses a lot.
Paper towel.
There's Ken.
Hi, Ken. Close up of Ken.
All right. Ken's sitting there staring in front of the camera.
Didn't even know where the camera was.
No, Frick takes the cake on that one. We'll leave it to that. So, your question was an adjustable fence. So this is a Stanley number, what is it, Jake, do you remember?
51.
The plane was a 51 and the shooting board was a 50. So this fence was adjustable. You loosen that, and there's a pin right here. That's supposed to be, screws supposed to keep from coming out. And you could there was that's 90 and 45. But then you could actually move this up to here. You could change, you can get whatever angle you want, which is actually quite convenient. But the problem with doing that on a homemade one is, can you secure it well enough? This is cast iron. The other nice thing about that too is that when you adjust this and you stop it here, you can, that's obviously going to move your fence, so you could pull your fence back, so, but you could also get it so it was really close to the sole, so it gave you lots of support right up to the blade. By the way, this is sharp, and I'll demonstrate it tonight. So the answer is yes. The other answer is, nah, I probably wouldn't, just because it's, I don't know how secure it would be. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from Oberon in Guelph, Ontario.
What's his first name?
Oberon.
Oberon?
Hi, Rob. I've seen a design for a ramped shooting board that aims to provide more even wear across the whole width of the plane blade. What are your thoughts about this idea?
Takes 32 seconds to sharpen. It takes 32 hours to build a ramped shooting board. I never saw the use of it. It's just too easy to. It's too easy to take your blade out and sharpen it. And if you really think about it, you might go from, if you're planing a 1/2-inch board, and you build you made a ramped shooting board, you would go from using a 1/2 inch of your blade to maybe using 5/8 of an inch. So, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. So I've never bothered. So here's the, I'll wait for Jake to get the camera on. Go ahead, next question, Frick.
Next question is from Joseph Milanenko in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Joseph.
Should there be a gap between the plane sole and the shooting board fence? If so, why?
Should there be a gap between this? Well, yeah. Mine has about a 1/16 of an inch. It's nice to have it supported as close as you can, but if you try to put it right to the sole, the first time you take a heavy pass, you're going to end up with, you know, and you take a heavy pass and then come back and take a lighter pass, you've cut away some of your fence. So it doesn't really matter, as long as it's close. You wouldn't want it half an inch away, I don't think. This one, as I said, you can adjust it because you can move that in and out, but this is fine. I've got more than a 1/16 of an inch gap. No, that's right, 6/16. Not a big deal. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from David Taylor in Toronto.
Hey, David.
He says, how can I use a shooting board for longer pieces of lumber? How do I support the end?
Okay, so I've got a piece right there I'm going to get Jake to hand me. Piece of that walnut that we're jointing. If you want, you can make just a long shooting board like this. So this increases my capacity. I don't use this for squaring the end. I use that one simply for planing a long edge. Now, these are 32 inches long, so they're obviously too long for that. So my capacity on this one comfortably is probably, I can do 24, probably even do 25 inches. If you've got a long board and you want to use a shooting board, you can use your bench. I'll just take this apart. What?
I think he's talking about shooting the end of it, but the board is too long.
Oh, what? Read it again, Frick, please.
How can I use a shooting board for longer pieces of lumber? How do I support the end?
Oh, you're right. Well, just cut a piece.
You used to have one.
Just cut an extra piece like this. That's the same, has to be the same as your shooting board. And then just move it out there as however far away you need it in order to support. I need a bigger bench. Ugh. So if I was shooting this is not made for this one, by the way, as that's obvious, but that's what you would do. And then you could put it wherever you want it. Just evens things up for you and keeps you from having to hold this down while you're doing it. Now, one of the nice features that they built into this Stanley is they have this cleat. How many times am I going to play musical shooting boards tonight? I'm getting there. So on this one, they have this heavy cast iron piece, and you sit it right there and then tighten it up. Now it still allows the board to move, but it keeps it from dropping down. So this one has to be clamped. Anyway, that's a nice little feature, although it sometimes feels like you need 3 hands in order to operate it, but once you lock it in place, it stays put. Next, Frick.
Jeff Bremer in Los Angeles.
Hey, Jeff.
Would there be a benefit to use a plane that has a 5-degree skewed blade on a shooting board?
Read it. Say that again, please.
Would there be a benefit to use a plane that has a 5-degree skewed blade on a shooting board?
A 5-degree skewed blade. So are you talking about this? See how that blade is skewed? And I don't know.
I don't think 5 degrees would make enough of a difference.
I don't know if I would bother trying to come up with something like that. I mean, if your blade is sharp, I used to use my, I didn't used to use it. I didn't do it on purpose, but I've used my high angle blade on my shooting board, and it worked fine as long as it was sharp. Now, what's nice about this is that the orientation of this handle is nice. The fact that there's a bar over here that you can adjust to squeeze your plane tight against that side, so it can't go left or right. When you're using a regular shooting board, that, by the way, is about $2,000 if you want to go to try and buy an original. So it may be out of your budget. I find it much easier to simply use my bench plane that I'm using anyway. Can tell which one's mine. So if I need to use a shooting board, I just grab it, throw it up here. I'm using the same plane. The only difference is you've got to be pushing the plane to my left. You got to be pushing the board to my right so that it stays engaged with the plane. But once you do it and you get accustomed to it, it's no big deal. It just happens. And it's a lot easier than trying to have another plane, another setup like this on your bench. If you had a separate bench somewhere, I suppose it would be great, but I don't. And I'd much rather just have that one plane that does everything. Next, Rick.
John Root in Greenbrier, Arkansas.
Hey, John.
I cannot get the last little bit to square up when shooting. Do you think the blade is not sharp enough, or is there another problem I'm missing? Perhaps a problem of technique.
Well, it's almost always a sharpening issue. Any problem with your plane can, I would say 95% of the time, it is a sharpening issue. So whenever somebody would have a problem, I would always, that would be the first thing that I would check. Read it to me again so I make sure I'm answering the right.
I cannot get the last little bit of square up when shooting. Do you think the blade is not sharp enough, or is there another problem I'm missing? Perhaps a problem of technique.
Well, you have to make sure that that your setup is square. So that's easy enough to do. Go past your blade, go in there and check to make sure that things are nice and square in both directions. And then you want to make sure that this is straight. That's one that this may be it, because this is a tricky one that people don't think to check. Your fence has to be straight. If it's got a bump in there, then your board wiggles like this when you're shooting it, and that'll throw it out of square. So this has to be straight. Check it with a straight edge. If you have to fix it, you can go in there and you can fix it with a shoulder plane, which is what most people would have. You can go in there, lay that on its side, and you can go in and correct it. You can also correct it with the shooting board, with the shoulder plane if it's not square. If you've got to take a little bit off of one end or the other, so you can make all those corrections. So, first thing I would check would be, is it sharp? Second thing I would check is this square is this fence square to the bottom of your plane? Third thing, and actually that would be number 3. Number 2 would be, is this front part of your fence straight so that your board is actually staying nice and tight and not wiggling one side or the other and being thrown off. Okay. Next.
Larry in Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg?
Yep.
Just right up the street. Super Dave flies into Fredericksburg every time he comes here.
I have some well-tuned vintage Stanley planes. What would be your choice to use on a shooting board? 5, 5.5, 6, or 6 bedrock or larger?
Well, the longer and the heavier the plane, the better it is on the shooting board, because you've got all that mass to help carry it through the cut. However, the downside is it's awkward to use a big long number 7 or number 8 as your general purpose plane, and if you're having to, I got my shirt on inside out? No. it's awkward to have to switch back and forth. So my favorite would be the 5.5. A 6 would be a close second because it's only a couple of inches longer.
But
So-
a Stanley 6 might be a better option though because of the weight. Where Stanleys were already light.
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go
And
with
it's a-
Jake's.
it's a
We'll go
six.
with Jake's answer,
It's a
6.
606.
Did he say you had a bedrock?
Yeah,
6?
6.
Yeah. That would work. Next
Well,
for
the 606 would give you more reference on its side.
because you got a little. If you have a bedrock, you have a little more surface area here, so that's a little more stable. Whereas the other versions with the rounded shoulder, a little less. Make sure it's square. Next, Rick. Do we have lots of questions tonight?
Not a ton, no.
Okay, well, let me introduce some introductions. First of all, what are we doing here? So this is in support of our Purple Heart project, and I'll say that quickly in case you don't know. Actually, in saying this, would you please comment in the section in the comment section if you're hearing this for the first time? So we started this program in 2016 as a result of Jesse Paredes, who was a combat wounded Marine that contacted me looking for a dovetail saw. In the fall of 2016, we were teaching a course called Training the Hand. We were doing it in Niagara Falls, Ontario, which is where we used to teach. And we decided, as a result of having met Jesse and looking into the plight of soldiers who have been affected by war and combat, hand tool woodworking has a very calming effect. Distractive therapy, some people call it. So our class that we taught, thanks to Bob Lippick, actually his wife, Barb Lippick, who supported us financially in this venture when we started. We had 7 combat wounded vets that came to the class along with 6 civilian students, and it was fantastic. So that started us on our journey. We just completed in October our 20th class. So now every year we conduct 6 classes that go from Sunday night to Sunday morning. And in that 6-day class, we teach the fundamentals of building furniture. You learn to sharpen, you learn to plane, you learn to cut dovetails, you learn to cut mortise and tenon, and so I should say it a little bit differently. You learn to sharpen, you learn to use your planes, your saws, your chisels. So when you learn to use those tools, you can pretty much cut any joint. And for the 7 vets that we can bring into the class, now these, in order to qualify, they have to have been injured in combat, whether it's a physical injury or a mental injury. And they apply online, RobCosman.com, or our new website, which is thepurpleheartproject.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't have an org.
Well, we do, but it's
just
not
goes-
completely set up yet. But they're both going to go to the same place, so it doesn't matter.
So if they apply and get accepted, we cover airfare, hotel, meals. Every vet takes home in US dollars about $4,000 worth of premium hand tools, just like I'm using. And thanks to the Bench Brigade, Jack Lane and Chris Chahusky and Jim Rossetti up here in Canada, we deliver a workbench to their homes that they can have, and now they're set up, able to go. So it's an expensive proposition because everything from airfares to tools costs money. So we've had lots of people over the years that wanted to participate, wanted to help. They wanted to somehow contribute. You can't all show up here and make cookies. We wouldn't get anything done. So you can contribute financially. We now are set up as a 501c3 in the U.S. We're working on setting up the same type of charitable organization status in Canada. That's probably 8 or 9 months out. But now your donations are recognized, and you can receive a tax receipt for them. So tonight, if you want to donate, by all means, be our guest, participate. Our first class will be in April. It's about the middle of April. The classes are all full. We have 7 civilian spots in each class. They're all full for 2023. There's always a chance that somebody drops out or gets sick, so if you want to be on a list, you can. And we've already notified and selected our vets for the first 4 classes. I think we did the first 4. I think it's 4, anyway. So we're still accepting applications for at least September and October if you're a combat wounded vet. We've had them from as far away as Australia. We actually have one coming from Australia in this next intake. They've come as far away as Denmark and Ireland. Majority come from the United States. The next majority, which is a minority, would come from Canada. And then the countries that I just stated. So,
And the closest we've ever had is from Chris Pam Sam.
who came from Chris Pam? Oh, Al. Oh, yeah. Was Al closer than Tony? Yeah. Wow, that'd be a toss-up. Al actually works here. So, open your wallets, open your hearts, or open your hearts and open your wallets. Either way. Send us some money, help us do our job. We'll be grateful, they'll be grateful, and you'll be richly rewarded. So what we do every time we do this is we give away prizes. So for every $1,000 we raise, we give away at least, we give away 1 prize, and those prizes are made by combat wounded vets who have been to our program, have gone home, are retired from the military, and are now doing woodworking businesses, some part-time, some full-time. And I'll introduce those to you a little bit later tonight when we take another break. Another question, please, Frick.
Next one comes from Dale Scott.
Dale Scott.
And
Where's
he's
he from?
Amherstburg, Ontario.
Amherstburg.
Yeah.
Why do we have burgs in all of our towns here? Shires in England. What's with the burg? You don't know?
No.
Dale, what would you like to know?
Is there an add-on for the Wood River Plains that would help those of us that are older with help to use the 5.5 or 6 on the shooting board? Pushing on the body of the plane can be difficult.
Well, Chris,
Dale.
we actually are working on that. People always see these holes in my plane. This is Jake's failed attempt, 1, 2, 3 times. I have no metal left. So we are working on a little handle that will fit like that. So there's a little ridge right there that'll go against the side of the plane. There's a brass pin, and you'll have to bore a hole in your plane, but hey, it's your plane. And the advantages of it are a lot. Now, Ken, do you have a mic? You don't have a mic.
Yeah.
Do you have a mic? Okay. So I'm going to get Ken to give you a little testimonial. How come I can't get that there? Because Ken often gets stuck shooting days on end. So these are all prototypes. Jake actually made these out of liquid metal. Is that what it's called?
Aren't
Putty?
they? Yeah.
So this was a prototype. This was another prototype that fills a different hole. And we played around to try to find a shape that was really comfortable. I don't like knob on there. I don't like a lot of these things I didn't like. But this one feels really comfortable. We've got Chris, our engineer, is working on it with Jake. How far out are we?
Well, we're beyond the prototype.
Yeah. Yeah. So the prototype part is near done, or done. So, Ken, tell them.
Tell them about.
Tell them you have to do all the shooting. Tell them how wonderful it is.
Well, it just is. It's a game changer because anybody that's done any shooting on a shooting board without one of those knows how sore your hand can get. Even a glove will help for a while, but even after a while, your joints get sore in here, and it's just really bad. But you can go all day with one of those, and it's not a problem. So it's really it's
Comfortable.
It's like the adjust star changes, adjusting it only I think even more so.
Yeah.
Makes it that much easier on your hand.
Thank you. So between the adjust star and what was the actual question? Oh, there was an add-on for that. So that handles the shooting board, and this is exactly where you want your hand, right over the widest part, right near the blade. So that's what you're actually pushing laterally on against. But then to have that right there, it just, if you set your hand down there, it fills that space in between. So most of the force is going against this. I would get in here and it would just get a raw callus down across there because you're having to just, I used to tell people, well, all you can do is just take that hunk of meat and shove it in that wedged area. But it makes it sore. And then there's the new adjustar. These will be ready maybe this week?
End of this week.
End of this week. So these are cast brass? Forged, whatever that means. So they've got a nice kind of a, how would you describe that finish? It's not polished. It's kind of it's not sandpaper feel. It's,
Texture.
well, it's got a texture on there, and what's nice about it is it just gives you a little bit of grip. It looks a lot better. So if you're having a hard time making adjustments on your plane, particularly in the shooting board phase, because you just go in, it's second nature now, you don't even think about it. You just spin it and gives you lots of leverage, so it's a big deal. It is a big deal. So yes, they're coming. Stay tuned. If you are not registered on our newsletter, let me pump you on that for a minute. So we put a lot of work into that. Luther always writes 1 or 2 articles. I do a video on a specific topic. So every month there is a topic. And the whole idea behind the newsletter is to provide you with information. And we also give our newsletter, what do we call them? Subscribers, thanks the word. The newsletter subscribers get first crack at everything. If we have a lot of seconds that we sell off, and that's usually, they're always just cosmetic flaws on something. What are you shaking your head about?
They don't get notified about that.
Well, what am I telling them then?
They get notified about new products.
But when something goes on sale, we always notify that we always use the
When something
newsletter.
goes on sale,
Yeah. Well, all right, then back up a little bit. Just sign up for it. You'll enjoy it. And that's how you find out about this stuff, too. All right, Frick. Please. Oh, so can you send a picture of Royce? Put him up there?
I can, actually.
Do you have one?
I have a
Since
couple.
we met last, my daughter Erica, oldest of 10 children, has just had her 5th child, another boy. They're all named after cars. And this little guy's name was Royce. He was born 9 pounds, 13 ounces. She has big babies. I think,
Her biggest baby is sitting right there.
yeah, Frick's a big baby.
Whatever.
Especially with a chisel in his hand. So what's 2 of the boys were over 10?
Yep. 10-3 and 10-1.
Anyway, they come out talking.
That's
And mother and baby are fine. Frick will put a picture up of
Yeah,
them.
the picture is of biggest brother Bentley, who is 12, and then Royce, about 4 days old there.
There you go. And we also have a new puppy. Hey, was somebody going to bring down? We want to introduce our new shop dog. Got to tell you about that in a minute. Can somebody bring Maple down? Little cameo. Honey maple, maple honey, maple butter. So we have a little dog. Her name is Maggie, and Maggie is a miniature Australian doodle. Golden doodle. And she would always come in during the class when we had the vets here, and she would just make her way around. She never barked. You ever hear her bark, Ken? Maggie?
I don't think so.
She just was a really nice dog, and she'd make her way around. Ken had treats for her and everybody else. And during the class, she would come in and she would just walk around, and she'd go up to one of the soldiers and just kind of rub against his leg. And I'm surprised how many of them would write about it after the fact. Well, my daughter Kenzie moved to go to school out in Alberta, and she took Maggie with her. So we have a void. So we got another one. She's just 6 or 7, 8 weeks. How old is she? 8 or 9 weeks. And her name, same type of dog. Her name is, well, it was going to be Maple, and then it was going to be Honey. So it's somewhere between Honey and Maple. But she'll come down. And we got her specifically for that, to be the little shop companion. All right, next question.
Stephen Klingerman in Rio Rico, Arizona.
Hi, Steve.
What is your 18-inch shooting track? Why is your 18-inch shooting track only 1 3/4 wide? The Lee Nielsen 51 is 2 1/8. So are the Stanley 51 and the Veritas? So are the Stanley 51 and Veritas planes?
What? I didn't catch that. You have to read it
Okay, he's
again.
saying that your shooting track is only 1 3/4
Right here.
wide, but the Lee Nielsen 51, Stanley 51, and Veritas 51 are 2 1/8.
But if your plane is only this wide, why do you need it to be any wider?
He's saying it's wider than your track, I think.
No, we're just efficient. We save on materials. If I'm understanding you right, this is the track that the plane runs on. It needs to be as wide as that part of the plane, which it is. Making it any wider wouldn't make any difference. Making it narrower would take away from the stability because you wouldn't have as much reference area, but this one does, so that's the reason why we do it like that. Next, Frick.
Duke Engine in Verona, Italy.
Hey, Duke.
Would it be possible to build one accurate shooting board to process long grain surfaces and end grain ends from 90 to 45 degrees?
Would it be possible? I'm going to have to read it again. I have to hear it twice.
Yes, I'm seeing that pattern. To build one accurate shooting board to process long grain surfaces and end grain ends from 90 to 45 degrees.
Well, yeah, you could. I mean, I've seen that where somebody has taken a shooting board like this, and then they just had a wedge, a 45-degree wedge, that they put in there, hopefully with some pins or something, so it would go to the exact same spot, and use that. I have two different shooting boards. The one on the bottom is for shooting a miter, and then we have one for doing the make one for the left-handed people, which just has it on the other side. Okay, I'm going to show you using the bench as a shooting board, but I'll wait until we're done with this before I move it off again.
So to clarify that last question,
Yeah.
the person asking was saying that the planes that he's using are wider than yours.
The planes that
Like you're showing a Wood River on that, and it fits the track, but the 51s, Lee Nielsen and Stanley, don't fit on that because they're.
Oh. Well, he's talking about a shooting board plane, a designated shooting board plane.
But a shooting board plane won't work on our shooting board
Yeah, why not?
because you don't have the ability to push it into the side.
You don't have the track.
What he's
Yeah.
saying is that his track is only 1 3/4 wide. Normally they're 1 7/8, 2 inches.
So if I was trying to use a plane like this on a shooting board like this, what Jake is suggesting is you really don't have the kind of control because you have to be pushing. You have to constantly be pushing this way in order to keep that nice and square. You can do it. But with this, your hand is actually right where the blade is, so it's a lot more efficient. Instead of trying to push here, I'm actually pushing right there. So they're built like this because the shooting boards they go with have an adjustable track that holds them so it doesn't slide one way or the other. But again, it comes back to, do you want to have a second plane on your bench? Mine is so cluttered, the fewer tools I have to use at any given time, the better. Next, Frick.
Peter in Culver City, California.
Hi, Peter.
How can I tweak your shooting board if it gets slightly out of square?
Just go in. So sometimes it just gets abused, right? I mean, they get beat around pretty good. So if I'm no longer square here, then what I can do is you can use a couple of different tools. This one would be what most people would have. I've got what's called a 10 1/4, same idea, it's a rabbiting plane, meaning it cuts full width. You could even use this, which is a little bit more difficult because it doesn't have much mass to it, but it's a rabbiting plane.
It's also it's a long grain cut though.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice to have a longer sole. So if my shooting board, if my fence was off like this, what I need to do to correct it is I've got to get rid of some material here. So I'm going to pull the blade in so that as not to wreck mine. So what I would do is I would start like that. Now the first thing you have to make sure is that the blade is cutting right to this edge. So after your blade's always wider than the sole of the plane, you'd go in, and whichever side is going to be laying down, you push that down like so. And now that makes sure that the blade is flush with this edge. And I would come in, depending on how bad it is, and I would make sure that's out of there. I would take one pass, come back a little bit, take another pass. I would have to have this secured so it didn't move around on me. Take another pass and just keep backing up and backing up. And then I would stop and check it. Actually, I would make one full pass before I stop and check it. And if I got to take off a little bit more, fine. Start here. There's my first pass. Second pass. Third pass. Fourth pass, and the final pass, you're taking one complete cut so that you're keeping this nice and straight. Actually, let me just back up a little bit. Whenever I do that, I always check it this way. I put my plane with the blade retracted or go past the blade, and I reference up against the actual plane, not against the track, here. Go in there and check that to make sure it's nice and square. When you get it, you get it. If it was the other way around, if it was out of square in this direction, then you're going to come in here. And that means I would start here, and I would take my first pass, and I would stop right about there. And then I would take another pass, and I would disengage while in forward motion, stopping right about here. And I would just keep doing that. My final pass would be a complete pass, end to end. Check it, and just keep doing that until you bring it back to where you want it. Next, Frick.
David Taylor in St. Louis, Missouri.
Hey, David.
Why do you do a chamfer on the backside of the stock?
Is this David's second question?
No. The other David was from Toronto.
Oh, really? Two David Taylors?
No,
Imagine that.
The other one wasn't David.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't David Taylor. It was David Toronto.
David Toronto?
David from Toronto.
Oh.
Why do you chamfer on the backside of the stock when shooting?
So, if you're planing the end of a board, like so, this is a piece of scrap, so I can what happens, see this? They actually have a word for it, spelch. See how that breaks out? So what you can do to avoid that, before you start, come in here, pull the board away from the fence, cut a little chamfer right here. Now when you flip this around, you'll notice a bit of a gap right there. Gotta do a little bit more. Now you got a gap. Board's not flat. As you plane, you watch the gap. And you have to stop planing before you go all the way past, or else you're going to do the same thing, you'll tear that off. But what that does is just, that prevents those last fibers from being cut, and they're unsupported because there's nothing out here, and they break away. But if you run your chamfer, and you don't want to run your chamfer like this, you run your chamfer like this. And you try to when you're doing your chamfer like this, get it right to the point where you want to take the end of your board. And then you just carefully approach it so that you come almost right to there on your last stroke, and you'll be good to go. That's why we do it, to prevent spelch, tear out at the end of the board. We have Moose here with us tonight, the can't think of the word. Purveyor?
Purveyor?
Purveyor of the dead cat? Goes all around the city with this. Purveyor of the dead cat sweater that we give away 3 every time we do this. Ken's here. Ken manages all the production in the shop behind me. Chris is here from Fredericton, and Chris is our lead man when it comes to developing new product. He's currently working on a whole bunch of stuff I'm not even allowed to say. But one squeaked out tonight, and that was the handle. But we got a lot of other. Do you work for anybody else? Do we take up most of your week? So supports what we do too with the Purple Heart Project. So good to have them here. And I presume Luther is on.
Yep.
Is Super Dave?
No.
He's just given up on us.
Somebody just texted and said, I think it was Dave, said they're having a water heater problem.
No, that was Jen.
Jack Lane.
Oh, yeah.
What do you need hot water for in Texas? Nothing freezes down there. If you're a combat wounded vet that has been to one of our 20 classes, we'd love to give you a shout out and acknowledge your presence. So if in the chat you just put @Ken and then your name and what class you were in, we'll give you a shout out. We're about to hear. Who's on tonight, Ken?
Casper's on.
Casper, all the way over in Denmark. That would be the Danish flag right here behind me. Casper was in our class August. Excellent craftsman.
Al McNeil's on all the way from Quispam 6.
So Al, you got to settle the argument. Who's closer to us, you or Tony? I know it'll be a toss-up. So Al is, how long has Al been working here?
Over a year, maybe 2.
Really?
Yeah.
So Al is a retired tank commander. This was the first round that he fired. And multiple tours overseas. Had a little incident on his last one. Al walked away. The other guy blew away. And Al, biggest asset to us is Al can fix anything. So we get, when our machines break or we buy used woodworking equipment, Al goes in and strips them and makes them like new, paints them all up. We just got a brand new to us, 20-inch General bandsaw. And we've got a 14-inch Delta coming and a Delta drill press that he'll be working on this week. We've never been able to stump him. And one I was most impressed with, we bought a big, massive 30-inch disc and oscillating spindle sander that came out of the UK. And Al stripped that thing down to the bare metal and fixed it, and there was all kinds of issues with it. So
He just commented in the messages that he's closer to us by about 15 kilometers.
Oh, sorry, Tony. Number 2. So Al's our closest. Al also worked as my assistant in one of the classes as well.
Kevin Burris is on.
Kev? So Kev is one of the guys who makes stuff that we will give away tonight. Kevin does the plaque behind me. Laser engraved on either granite or slate. I prefer the slate. So if you have a moment in time that's important, you should have it. You should talk to Kevin, have it done. He also does ones with military theme. Do anything for you. At your pets, he'll laser engrave a picture.
Sid is on.
Sid is on. So Sid is also retired Canadian Army. Sid was in our class in September. He was in a September class. And Sid works here 1 day a week. He could have been running for proximity too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeff O'Connor's on.
Jeffrey. So Jeff is the maker of the shave bowl and brushes and the kiss stick and the, what do we call this, Jake? This is a shucking? I think this is a shucking knife.
The knife made with no craftsman involved?
I think this is a shucking knife. Oyster shucker? Pig sticker? Those what do we call scales are made out of, I think this is bog oak. So that's one of the other gifts that we'll give away. He also does a cleaver. I haven't got one yet, but I'm getting one. And we just got a big shipment of all the different, did you smell these?
I have some.
No, but we got 5 different flavors. I thought we had 6.
Different flavors.
Did you lift one? Check his pockets before he leaves.
What would Chris do it?
Smell these are the, see which one you like the most. Hand it over to Moose too. So Jeff makes these shave bowls.
Seriously, 7.
And what? No.
I said 7.
Well, there's 2, but they're duplicates. So that's made out of badger bum hair. And there's his logo on the back end. Does Super Dave harvest the badger bum hair for him?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so if I don't enjoy shaving, but I love being shaved. So Bo, my son, I get the hot towel treatment, the whole bit, and the shave soap. A friend of Jeff's makes that, and it is delicious.
Winter birch is the nicest one.
Winter birch, yeah. So I think I've been telling him he may have these on his site now, so you can go in and buy one of these several different flavors. Which one do you like, Moose?
I like the winter birch as well.
That's also my favorite.
Oh, is it Frick?
Yep.
Voice from the dark. So we have winter birch, Iron Man. I thought that would have been your favorite, Frick.
No.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so these are all handmade, man-handed. So
Hairy hippie? Is there any hairy hippie?
there's no hairy hippie. But this one's for you, Salty Mariner. The old salt.
Old tar.
Liquid shave soap, and this one is Skyline Drive shave soap. Anyway,
They're all good.
yeah. So, oh yeah, and Jesse Rufian. So Jesse makes these, and we've got a couple of these to give away tonight too. So these are cell phone stands. So if you're watching our Instagram channel, you might, right, Frick? You set your phone like that.
Yeah.
And if you're watching our YouTube channel, you're going to set your phone like that. Isn't that nice? I'll set mine right there.
Michael Delvoye's on.
Michael, class.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Summer?
August 22.
August class, yeah. Mike, who else?
Jeremy Thompson, August 22.
Yeah, I remember Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy.
Tim Pierce, September 22.
Hey, Tim. So Tim was Vietnam era, and also connected, an EOD, connected through Jeff. Nice to have you on, Tim. Tip my hat to you. Only my hair would fall out.
Phil Lawrence, 2008.
Phil Lawrence, 2019?
18.
18. Was
Not Phil Lawton.
no. Phil Lawrence. Was he up in Ontario? Okay.
Jerry Pickering, May 22.
Jerry's another Vietnam vet, medic. He was what year? 2022. Yeah. Jerry sent us a shoot. I'm supposed to tell him. Jerry sent us a really nice medic bag. He's the one that has all the somebody's going to the hospital. That was funny. So go get that, would you? Where is
Right
it?
there at the corner before you go into the giant.
It's got bring it, and then I'll instead of me trying to take it from memory, I'll read it to him. Yeah, just go out there. So when you go in and grab yourself a cookie.
Well, grab me one while you're at it.
So you know what I'm talking about? I think it's a red bag. Yeah.
Fill your apron with cookies.
Yeah, because Moose is out here chopping his. Who else? Ken?
That's all the vets that have identified themselves to me anyway. There's some other familiar names on.
Remember, you got to put that at Ken so that it jumps out at him and he'll see it.
We got a
Oh,
couple.
Jim Eakin.
We got a couple.
Jim
first-
Eakin's on? Golden Eye Jim?
We got a couple first.
Love
time
telling that
viewers.
story.
We have John and
Hi,
Judy.
Jim.
John and Judy Spicer, first time viewers from Bahrain.
Bahrain. John and Judy?
Yeah. Spicer.
Welcome, folks. You're up late. So,
We had an additional
Thank you.
question on the chamfer on the back of your board.
Okay.
If you use it on the miter tree.
Oh no, I don't. I don't use it. You get no. Don't use it on the miter shooting board. The little bit of a feathery stuff you get is nothing. No big deal. Don't need it there. So Jerry, I remember his story, was a medic during Vietnam, and I don't know why. How come everybody? Is this all because of Frick? That we got all these medical
because
kits.
we didn't have about any Band-Aids. and people would cut-
So he sent this. Huh?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah.
They probably have scissors to cut your hair.
So here's how. So the stuff is all in here. So each one, boo-boos is the first one. So this would be, what would Frick do that we would consider a boo-boo? A hangnail? A hangnail?
Probably.
Yeah. Frick had a hangnail, he would go into this bag. If Frick had a 1/8" chisel, he would go into this bag. This is small cuts.
Paper cuts.
So paper cuts, a little bit more serious. Then if you gave Frick a 1/4" chisel, this would be larger cuts. So again, you're dealing with bigger material. And then if you let Frick alone, he would be using this one. Someone is going to the hospital. And this has all the, this has, there should be some, what's the stuff that they used in World War II that they used to, everybody give them a shot of morphine. There's got to be some morphine in here somewhere. Hey, I think back to the night. Wonderful. We got to find a special place for this. This is great. I'm supposed to do something about this, and I keep forgetting. Awesome. Oh, somebody else sent us a kit too. Who was that? Got to remember. Almost makes me want to go cut myself now. Next, Frick. Will you shout if you hear somebody else?
Well, just really quickly while we're on the topic of the vets and everything.
Forget to say hello to Angie too. Pardon?
Just while we're on the topic of the vets and everything, Luther wanted me to say thank you to everybody who participated in the auction. The last live, we raised over $10,000 for the Purple Heart Project with the 3 machines there. So
Yes.
thank you.
So I just going to explain that story to you real quick because I think let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So here's the story. One of the vets that I was working with was having a rough go financially, had some brand new equipment, brand new meaning he bought it in 2020, and needed to sell it. Contacted me, wanted to know if I knew anybody. So my first phone call was to Mattress Doug. And Doug owns a mattress factory in Dubuque, Dubuque, Iowa. And I had met Doug over the phone. He customer called and ordered, and I called to say thank you. And told me the story about how when COVID hit and their business went flat, he said, well, he kept his employees busy making masks because there was such a shortage of them. And I thought, you know what? That's pretty incredible. Somebody would do that, taking money out of his own pocket. But you know what? The more you give, the more you receive. So when you figure that part out, your life will be really good. Anyway, so I called Doug and said, Doug, do you know anybody that could use this equipment? Because I'd like to try to sell it for him as quick as possible. Well, Doug turned around, sent the vet the money that he was looking for, and then contacted me and said, Rob, I'm just going to give you the equipment. You sell it, raise money for Purple Heart. Took us a little while to get our act together and figure out a way to do it. But Luther and Frick finally did. So we had the auction. It ended just after our last live. And we raised over $10,000 on those 3 pieces of equipment. By the way, it was a full-size saw stop, a 20-inch Powermatic thickness planer with a helical head, and a long bed 8-inch jointer made by Grizzly. Has all the equipment been delivered?
I haven't heard.
Probably not yet.
Yeah, Luther, let us know. Anyway, so that was just awesome, beyond awesome. So if you ever need a great mattress, you need to check out Doug's site. Can you put a link to Doug's site up there?
What is it? What's the name of it?
mattressdoug.com.
Are you sure about that?
No, I don't remember. But if Doug, well,
Mattress Doug might go somewhere else, so we don't want people to go.
It's something with the last name or something, is it? Maybe it's Dubuque.
Somebody find it, and we'll put it up. We'll put it up for you tonight.
The guy, John and Judy Spicer from Bahrain that I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, he's coming to the September 23 class.
Oh, is he? Oh, it's a long drive. I would suggest you come a few days early, and just to acclimate, because they're long days. I know when we brought our last Australian, we brought him in 3 or 4 days early so he could acclimate. That was Ash. Acclimate's not the word, but will you say it anyway? Because you know what I mean.
Acclimatize.
No, it's more of a time thing. Body clock. Jet lag, yes. Okay, next, Rick.
Lester Smith in Los Del Mar, California.
Lester,
Why don't you make your shooting boards with a little dust relief on the bottom corner of the fence?
why don't I? Well, you could. You could if you wanted to. So what he's referring to is putting a little groove, a vertical groove right along there so that dust doesn't accumulate in there. But I don't. It's not that big of a deal. It's rare. I mean, I shouldn't say it's rare. I don't have to do this very often, but occasionally I'll just come in with a square and I'll just do that to scrape it out. But usually there's very little in there. So it's almost a solution to a problem that I wouldn't say doesn't exist, but doesn't exist.
Doesn't warrant fixing.
Doesn't warrant, yeah. But you can do it. You can do that. A lot of people have. We put a little track right there, a little rabbit right there, so that this part runs below the blade, so you're not cutting into your shooting board when you use it. And we also, I'll give you a little commercial. We'll say that this is tonight's episode. Tonight's show is being sponsored by RC Woodworking's shooting boards. So one of the things that I discovered, or I shouldn't say I discovered, but I was struggling with, is getting my piece square this way. And I could not for the life of me figure out why is that thing not sitting square. I mean, this is parallel to that. Why wouldn't it work? And the side of the plane was parallel to the sole. Well, here's what happens. Because of the shape of the side of your plane, being wide here, narrow here, if that ends up sitting in a cupped surface, what'll happen, I'll exaggerate it, what happens is the plane bridges the cup, right? If the board was sitting like this, the plane would be sitting here and sitting here. Well, as soon as you do that, what happens is this leans out. See, as I lift that up and increase that gap, that leans out, and that's what was going on. So, because the shooting board is made of 2 different pieces of wood, or 2 different pieces of material, MDF on the bottom because it has a nice hard-wearing surface, piece of plywood here. Why do you need that? Well, if you don't, you're not into the blade. You've got to get past this. So your work has to be elevated to get up here into the blade. Whenever you glue 2 pieces together, and you need glue because it's the equivalent to welding metal. That's what makes the 2 pieces homogeneous. When you do that, it often creates a stress line, and the board would end up cupping like this on us. So when we build ours, we actually form them over a mold so that we introduce a slight bow like this. Because the plane is wider in the middle, if you do that, it doesn't change the way this sits. And it'll actually come out when you press down like this, but it doesn't bother it. The opposite is lethal. This way is actually improves it. So all of our shooting boards are built over that form. We make we make a 24-inch, which is it our most popular or the 18? What do we sell more of?
18 lately.
Really? We make a 24, an 18, and then we make a little one for using with your which is really nice because you're not having to lift that monstrosity every time you need it. I use this with my what is this thing? My block plane. Oh, blade's out too far. And I use this when I'm dealing with small pieces, but you can come in here and use it just like a regular shooting board, only it's nice and small and compact. So if you're into small boxes, things like that, you might want to consider making one like that, or if you don't want to make it, you can always buy it from us. I'm sure Ken would be more than happy to make you one. All right, next question, Frick, please.
An update on the machines. Luther said the saw stop and the planer have been delivered, and the joiner will be delivered next week.
Okay, great. Thanks, Danny.
All right, Jimmy Johnson in Charleston, West Virginia,
Hey, Jimmy.
says, can you explain how to use shims on the shooting board fence to tweak the angle in both directions?
Yeah. So when I'm building drawers, oh, by the way, this is another option tonight. So this is a handbag made by Kim O'Connor, which is Jeff's boss. Did I say that right? Jeff's boss, yes.
No. Jeffy's boss.
Jeffy's boss. Yeah, his pet name. Anyway, we'll talk a little more about that, and I'll tell you. I want to make sure I want to tell you about the plight of the wives or the spouses of combat wounded veterans, because Kim's starting a program to help that. What am I looking for over here? Okay, so when I'm building a drawer, I have to get the drawer front and the drawer back to fit the opening. So it doesn't matter whether that is square or not. It has to fit, which means sometimes I can't just come in and use my shooting board. Where's that little piece I just had? I can't. This is the piece I'm using for the drawer fronts. I can't come in and just shoot that because that would produce a square end, and it may or may not fit. So if I have to adjust it slightly, we sell these, don't we, Ken? We have them in stock? So this is a feeler gauge, and it has multiple different thicknesses. So depending on how much I need, sometimes it's only a little bit. And this is if you're a fussy woodworker. I admit to being a fussy woodworker. So there's doing it right and doing it not right. There's only one that's acceptable. So if I need a little bit of a slope in this direction, I would go in there like this, put that in place. So now that's holding it out just a little bit, and I would go in and I would plane that until it was straight. Nothing to do with square. It would be straight from here to there. And if it was right, wonderful. If it wasn't right, I would either adjust, take more off, or take more off if I had to. If I had to go the other way, I can bring the shim stock out here in the back, and now it's lifting it this way, and I can go in and I can plane until I make the edge straight. Shortest distance between 2 points. So if that was square and now I'm having to adjust the angle, I have to keep planing until that surface is straight. Whatever the angle is, but it has to be straight from here to here. And that's all there is to it. And then you just use whatever thickness you want. Or you can use tape. This is a little more accurate because you know exactly how much you're having to do. So if I do the drawer back and I know I had to put in a 5 thou shim at the front, then when I go to do this one, I can do it the same way. Next, Frick. Hey, Jake, I'm missing a shoulder. No, never mind. It's over there.
Bill Pratt in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey, Bill.
Can I shoot 2 boards at once so that the ends are equal to each other?
Can you shoot 2 boards at once?
We just did a video on that.
Shooting 2 boards at once?
No, shooting boards the same length.
Oh, did we publish it yet?
Yeah, it was like a month ago.
So, ask me the question again, please, Frick.
Can I shoot 2 boards at once so that the ends are equal to each other?
I don't usually, just because I find it, because you're trying to push. So if I wanted both of these to be the exact same length, now I suppose I could do that because I can control it with my finger, but you know, you've got to be pushing the same amount on both boards. So I prefer to do one, that becomes my standard, go in and flush it up here, take my knife, referencing off of this. Let's flip it over and I'll show you exactly what I mean. When I say knife, I use this blade.
These are drawer fronts, right?
Yeah. I would flush it up on the back side over here, and then I would go in and I would reference my plain blade like so, and I would leave a mark right over there. Now you can see it, but in order to see it even better, I would come in here and I would grab my Optivisor and I would put that on, and I would go in there and I would very carefully plane that. Now, in order to do that, I got to take more off this end than this end. I would flip it over first. I would cut my little chamfer until I was right where I wanted to be, and then I would go in and I would finish that. And you can always tell, I don't know if Jake's going to be able to get in tight or not, but when you use a knife to mark it, you'll eventually get to the point where the little short fibers will disappear, and the little short fibers are what's between where the knife cut and the end of the board. And it shows as being not tight against the sole. And you just keep going until that disappears, and then you know you're right on your line. Little things like that to watch for, well, if you know to watch for, allow you to sneak up and get incredibly accurate with your plane. Next, Frick.
Ches Jokum in Silver City, Nevada.
Ches, C-H-E-Z.
Correct.
Hey, Ches.
How do I tell if my blade is perfectly parallel to the sole when shooting? I always seem to get the end slight out of square because my blade is skewed and I don't know it.
How do I tell if my blade is perfectly parallel to the sole
When shooting.
when shooting? Well, one of the things that you can do, I got to put some of these away. Prior to, I'm going to modify this answer just a little bit because you may end up having the blade parallel to the sole, but when you start using it in your shooting board, you may have to make a slight adjustment to accommodate for a little wonkiness in your shooting board itself. So the fact that you've actually set it up perfectly doesn't always mean that it's going to perform that way. That's kind of an adjustment that has to be made on the fly. But what I would do, if you can't see it, you'll eventually get to a point where you'll be able to see it. But until that time,
See it in which sense?
see it meaning you can look down and you can see that your blade is parallel to the sole. So what I would do is take a piece of wood, put it in my vise, and then with my blade set, take a pass, and then go from one side to the other. And you'll be able to tell if one's a little bit thicker or one's a little bit thinner. And then you just adjust accordingly. And you'll get accustomed to seeing, you measure it if you wanted to. You'll get accustomed to being able to look at a shaving and tell that's thinner, that's thicker, just the way the wood behaves.
Show them how
when
to
it comes
check
out.
it on their using it on the shooting board.
Show them how to check it. when
You know the
using
way
shooting
it
board.
cuts the end of the board.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you see this cut, right? See how that is sloped like that? But that's assuming, Jake, that that this one was done. So typically,
Like you can look at that.
blade needs to be sharpened. Typically, you would want to see, if I hold that steady,
I
can
got
you
it.
see
I can see it.
Do you see how that's sloped like that? Well, that tells me that your blade is not, the edge is not square to the faces. It's running a little bit longer on the bottom than it is on the top. So what would I do to fix that? Well, I want the top part to cut more off than the bottom. So I would push the blade like this, push the lateral adjustment lever down, and that's going to cause the blade to come up like this, And that would end up resulting in I'm gonna run out of material
I'm
here.
gonna have to chamfer. Make a bigger chamfer.
Well, part of the problem is that this board is not sitting flat, right? So I'm trying to do something with a board that's not flat, so it's not exactly working.
I can't see it yet.
You can't see it? I can't see it very well either. Nice theory, the blade needs to be sharpened. But that little shadow left should be square, not sloped one way or the other. And then, of course, you could always just take your plane or take your square and check it. And if it's right, live with it. But your board's got to be sitting flat. You can't work with something like that, because if it rocks like that, when it's pushed down here, it's going to perform differently than when it's pushed down over there. So you have to have your reference surface down and your reference edge forward. So if you've got a rough edge or one that's not flat, that can be up, and that edge that may or may not be parallel to there can be away from you. But everything, in order to get this nice and square in two directions, meaning this way and this way, you have to have a reference face, a known true flat surface down, and a known true square edge up against the fence. And then it'll work. Anybody new to talk to, Frick? Ken?
John Beck.
Hey, John. John made us a very nice donation last time. They were sending, actually, John, you and I need to talk. John is a World War II, sorry, John. Vietnam vet down in Clarkson. Yeah, not that old. He's timeless, he's Santa Claus. Clarksville, Tennessee, friend of Danny Bell's.
Ray
And
Doors.
I don't know if Santa Claus is on tonight. Santa Claus and his wife, I've been corresponding with him lately. If he is, Annika cooked our meal tonight, so down but not out.
Ray Door.
Oh, Ray Dorr. Cool Ray from Louisiana. Hi, Ray. Good to see you, brother. Frick, next.
Sydney Albert in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Sydney?
Yep.
Sid?
I have an unheated workshop. Will that affect your shooting board if I purchase one? Oklahoma, remember.
Yeah, Kevin's moving to Oklahoma. An unheated shop in Oklahoma shouldn't, because the shooting board is made out of MDF, hardwood strips, and plywood. I don't think it would. I don't think it would impact it negatively. See you, Moose. Have a cookie on your way out. See you Monday.
Don't eat mine.
Sample them all, little bites in them. I think you'd be good. I would probably take it inside just for, anything made out of wood is always better off if it's going to stay in a constant environment. Remember, we used to use Schoberg benches when we taught the classes up in Ontario, and the last time we did it, we stored them in my friend's Mike Smrek's barn. It was dry, but it was not heated. And when we went up there in the spring or summer, the benches, all of the joints had broken loose and the pieces had moved and warped and nothing was flat or straight. It was a disaster. So I think you're always best to either keep heat on in your shop or keep wooden items in a controlled environment. Oh, I should mention this. So I built this box. We did we did this in the online workshop. Made this box out of English walnut and holly. Holly is a nice white wood. And we had a really bad rainstorm here. I had just built this little shelf, and that's where I was storing all my boxes to keep them out of the way. Didn't that pipe up where the wires come from the other building, drip, drip, drip. When I found it, there was a puddle of water sitting up in here. The finish was ruined. The box was all twisted and warped. But, and I just said, oh, disgusted. But look how well it's come back. If you examine that joint, hey Mitch, examine that joint, and you examine the front, it's still just a little bit sprung on this side, but not bad. Oh, there's the only thing that happened is the glue let go on this piece of the hinge. So if I can fix that, I can salvage it. But this holly was all hand
You don't need to do that, man.
So this is, come here. That is maple butter, bird's eye maple.
Maple butter tart.
Maple butter tart.
So people can see it.
Ken has a same color, but his is not a miniature. It's a what is it?
Just a golden doodle.
Golden doodle.
Same color.
This is, I keep wanting to call her Maggie. Maggie was the last one. Anyway, so if you come into the class, you'll meet her. She'll be a little bit bigger. Not much.
Yeah.
Next, Frick.
This one comes from John Deckman.
Did I answer that question, by the way?
I don't know.
What was
You
it?
didn't finish your box story, did you?
Well, I'm just amazed at how well it's come. Oh, I know we were talking about the shooting board in a cold climate. How well it's recovered. I've got to put new finish on the back side, but it's a little bit difficult because you got to work around the hinge. But it survived. Joint held up too. Go ahead, Frick.
This one's from John Deckman in the chat. He says, "Hi, Rob.
Hi, John.
Would it matter if the shooting board top layer was made of hardwood instead of plywood? Cabinet grade birch plywood is hard to get around here in Wisconsin."
Hardwood? No, you don't want to glue a piece of solid wood onto a piece of MDF. That's going to cause even more problems. They don't move the same. If you can't get Baltic birch, you can use a regular piece of plywood, or you could even use a thinner piece of MDF. That'll work as well. I'm not sure why we use the plywood other than the fact that it just looks a little bit better, but.
Somebody says, how much is the box as is?
Oh.
Unsellable.
Yeah, I can't sell something that's not up to snuff. But Frick and I are in the process. I'm opening up my own site, or another site what's it going to be called?
Rob Cosman Woodworks.
Rob Cosman Woodworks. And there'll be a section that'll be called Rob Cosman Unhinged. Thank you, Kim.
That's your biography.
That's my biography. Current.
Yeah.
And that'll have, I've got a whole bunch of boxes. If you want a little sneak peek, I've been building up some inventory. Come over here, Jake. If I can keep the water off of them. So I have several boxes in here of varying sizes. So maybe I get another, if I do that amount one more time, then we'll go live and we'll sell those boxes. So if you're interested in having a piece of original Rob Cosman wood hinge, you'll be able to. What you do? I think it's our first time running around in here.
Yeah.
Next, Rick.
Some shavings.
Sally Clark in Kansas City.
Hey, Sally.
Or, yeah. Would it be good idea to adhere some 220 sandpaper to my shooting board to help me hold my board more securely?
Would it be good to adhere some 220 sandpaper to my shooting board to hold my board more securely? Not really, because you, when you're planing this, you have to keep advancing this piece in that direction because this doesn't move and you're going into a knife that's taking more off each time. So you've got to be able to move that. Now we actually do put a piece on here we put a piece of emery cloth on there because that's a little bit different. What you can do on that one is you actually would stick your board out, and then you would it would stay in position, and you would plane until your plane eventually comes in like this. But not so with this one. So no, I wouldn't put sandpaper on that. I wouldn't. Next, Frick. Notice I have a new picture. Angie always likes to keep us updated. So Angie is Ken's cousin, and Angie and her sister Lynn, they do all the packaging of our Purple Heart t-shirts. There's 3 to choose from. Wood is good, wood for good, wood doing good. They all have our Purple Heart logo on the front. And if you want to keep Angie busy, you can go ahead and order a t-shirt tonight. We have them from small all the way up to 3X? 4X.
You guys done with it?
Yeah. See you, Maple.
Yeah.
Oh, get your head in there. Next, Frick.
Next stop.
Thank you, Mitch.
Yeah. Goodbye, people.
Andrew Snodgrass in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
Hi, Andrew.
Will every wood work on a shooting board? I have real issue shooting hard maple.
Yeah, every wood will. You may have to. It's almost always a sharpening issue. So, if you take a piece of a board like this, and I was to ask you, which of these you've got face, edge, and end?
I'm on the camera. 2 seconds. Mike wants to say it. Apparently it's on. What's up, buddy?
Stop in and get a shout out. So if I were to ask which of the 3 is going to be the more difficult to plane, it would be the end grain. If your blade is sharp like it should be, that end grain should not present any kind of an issue to plane. So if you're having a hard time, it's almost always going to be a matter of you just need to go in there and touch that blade up again. So not, and maple's no different than walnut in terms of doing it on the shooting board. In fact, the nice thing about maple is the end grain shaving stays together, and they look really cool. Next, Rick. Check out my 32 seconds to sharp on YouTube, and that will help you. And if you don't have the gear, I'll do another little commercial. Nobody ever wants to spend money on sharpening equipment because it doesn't look as nice as a hand plane does. But your planes, your chisels, your scrapers, every edge tool you have that you sharpen, that tool's performance is going to be based on how well it was sharpened. Sharpening is process and equipment. And I would say that it's more equipment than it is process. Although if you don't have your process down, no matter what you do, it's not going to be very good. But I use this stuff, and I use it because it's the best. Why settle for second best? It lasts you for multiple years, and it's going to make these far more enjoyable to use. So see us, go on our site, and check out the sharpening equipment. We have it in kits, depending on your budget. And it represents the best medium for sharpening that you can buy right now. If there was something better, I would spend the money and go get it. But there isn't. Next, Prick. How are we doing for donations?
I don't know. It's a Luther question. I'll get him to tell me. We have 550 people on, by the way.
Oh, that's good. Hi, folks.
Next question comes from Tom Sanders in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Hey, Tom.
How do you keep the edges parallel when shooting both long edges of the board? I see you doing that when prepping dovetail blanks.
Yeah. So when dovetail blanks. So have we got a piece right here somewhere? If I had a piece of, now I'm what you would call a hybrid woodworker, meaning I use both hand tools and power tools.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a board. So I would take this and I would process it with the, here's something better. I would process it with all of my power tools. So I would joint the edge, I would go over to the table saw and I would rip that so that that edge and this edge are parallel. Now, if I'm gonna come in here, huh?
It's cupped.
Well, I'm just giving them for instance. I would come in here and I would take, as long as you take a complete pass, in other words, if I could take that shaving and unravel it, it should be the full length of the board, although they shrink when you take them off. But it's essentially the full length of the board. So I've taken a full width pass off and it's the same thickness from end to end. So if I take 2 passes with that side, flip this over, because almost always the grain is gonna be such that you're going to want to spin it around. Now this one hasn't been done. But then if I went in there and I took 2 complete passes with this one, I shouldn't have disturbed the parallelity. How's that for a word? I shouldn't have disturbed that, and it should be fine. It's when you skip here and then you pick, and then your blade starts cutting down here. Now you've introduced a bit of a taper. You may have to go back over to the table saw. Or, if you're strictly hand tool only, either use your panel gauge or your marking gauge to come in and to reestablish the parallel feature off of your reference edge. Go in there and run that end to end. And if you got more meat here than you do down there, then you can follow the line to bring it back into being parallel. But I usually, the biggest thing is just to always make sure that when you do this, that you pick up and carry. Somebody wanting to, is that Megan?
Yeah.
So you want to carry the blade all the way through so that you're taking the same amount of material off. That's a simple way of doing it. Next, Frick.
Tommy Wonder in Saluda, South Carolina.
Hey, Tommy.
I cannot seem to get those nice thin shavings with my shooting board, and half the time my plane gets stopped when the blade engages the wood. I think I have a super small projection on the blade.
Sharpening issue. It's always, always, always a sharpening issue, and you may get tired of having me say that. But the sharper the blade, the less effort required to push the blade through the wood. The sharper the blade, the finer the shaving you can take. So if you either can't get a fine shaving or you get stuck, it's almost always a sharpening issue. And if you've never had anybody teach you how, not that you can't learn on your own, but the problem is not knowing when it is sharp. How do you gauge that? When we sell planes, we sell them and they're already sharpened and they're ready to go to our standards, so that when somebody gets it, they at least now have a living example of what is sharp. Again, I'll take it back to 32 seconds to sharp. Go in there, view the equipment, make sure that your equipment is up to snuff, and then just follow my simple instructions on learning how to sharpen. Most people overcomplicate it. If it takes me 32 seconds, it shouldn't take you any more than that. I encourage and teach freehand sharpening, and the problem is that people will say, well, they'll spend too much time. The longer you spend doing this, the more fatigue sets in and you start rocking instead of keep maintaining that little angle. Those stones will cut fast enough that each procedure only takes 30 seconds. Each procedure only takes 10 seconds. The last little bit is where the extra 2 seconds comes in, but yeah, it's not hard. Not hard, but you have to have the right equipment. Don't be cheap about it. Get the right equipment. If you can't afford it, save up until you can. Get the right equipment. Next, Frick.
Jeff Adams in Woodbury, Connecticut.
Hey, Jeff.
When building a mitered shooting board, how critical is it to get the fence set up at exactly 45 degrees, or should I just use shims to match up the angle needed?
Well, I would certainly try to get it perfect. Then if you set it up for 45 degrees, then every time you use it, you know you're going to get 45 degrees in the end of your board. So I would rather spend a lot of time building it right, than to spend a little bit of time every time I do it trying to shim it to get it right. So my rule that I kind of follow is you always do it so that you can no longer see where it can be improved. And then you can sleep better at night.
So,
What?
well, pull out your shooting board.
Which
Your
one?
mitered one. And the best way to get it right is to have two pieces and shoot the ends of both of them, put them together, and hold a square in them.
Make sure you're getting a 90 when the two pieces.
And if you're not, then you just take your shoulder plane and adjust your fence accordingly.
Yeah, you can adjust this fence the same way you can adjust that fence. But why not glue it in place, have this piece all prepared and glue it in place and get something that you know is an actual 45 to hold the two pieces. So if I was gluing that on and I had some kind of a guide, now we had Wonder Willie make us some steel jigs that we put on there, so we always get it at 45 degrees. But if you're whatever you're using, and you could do that by hand too. You could take a piece of plywood and cut a 45, and then bring it into perfect shape with your plane, so that you can put that in there. But when you put it in place, glue this one, hold it just enough to get it to tack. You know, a couple of CCR songs, all it would take. And then take your hands off, let it set up, then come in and screw it in place. Can't rely on just the glue. Then you've got to screw it in place, and you don't want to rely just on the screws because they'll always creep. And now that should stay put. And if you still need a little fine tuning after that, that's where you come in with your shoulder plane to make slight adjustments. But be fussy. Be the ball, Danny. Feel the ball. Caddyshack. Next, Ken, anybody else? No? Frick, question?
Jamie Neal in Greenville, South Carolina.
Jamie in Greenville, South Carolina. I've been there numerous times.
How hard are you forcing the wood into the plane sole when shooting? I can't seem to get that right.
Well, you can't force the wood this way harder than you're pushing the plane this way. So I'm just pulling this out of my head. If I was putting 2 pounds of pressure this way, I had to limit this one to 1.5 pounds. But again, it's a sharp blade. A lot of these questions tonight are all, I bet if I came over and checked, I would say, no, you need to sharpen that better. Because if it's sharp, if you've ever used a dull chisel, you're trying to pare the end of a piece of wood. In other words, you're dealing with end grain. Your chisel's not sharp. And you're in there and you're trying to, it's not picking up, and you have to keep lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting before it finally engages the wood. That's a dull chisel. Also, back that's not flat, but in this application, it's just a dull plane blade. The plane won't catch, with minimal projection, it's not sharp enough to catch the fibers. So you have to advance the blade more, and in advancing the blade more, now you're taking a very aggressive cut with a dull blade, which means you have to push even harder. And the harder you push, the less control you're afforded. It's not a fun situation. So take your blade. We just did a sharpening one not that long ago. I'm going to harp on it. Buy my sharpening equipment. It's the best there is. It's what we use. We only sell stuff that we use, and we only use the stuff that we sell. So that equipment at the end of my bench, the equipment that we give all the vets when they come, it's the same. Buy that. Buy that for this reason. Then, if you sharpen and it still doesn't work, at least you know it's you, it's not the equipment. Right now, you don't know whether it's your technique or you've got lousy equipment. Get really good equipment. I always say, spend your money. Spend your money, you can get yourself 75% of the way there. It's like cutting dovetails. If you've got a really good dovetail saw, when it makes a cut, it will leave a perfectly flat, smooth surface that is ready to meet the opposite piece and give you a great joint. If you've got lousy equipment, you're having to try to compensate for that, and it rarely works out because if you're new, you don't know enough to be able to compensate for it. So you have to make sure that the equipment side of the equation is delivering, and then you just have to learn how to use it. And in most cases, I'll give you great proof of that. So when I used to do the wood shows, We were out there trying to drum up business. We were an unknown commodity, and we were there on a shoestring budget. I'd have my bench there with a couple pieces of wood, a little platform so I could get some height. Go get some height, and then we'll make fun of it. But what I would do is I would just be planing pieces of wood, and I'd let the little shavings float in the air, and people would see it, and I'd grab them by the arm if they looked close enough and bring them up and say, now try it. I never once had to instruct somebody how to use the plane. So usually the people at Pregnant have never used the plane before, but yet they can make it work. Well, wait a minute. How is it that somebody who's never used a hand plane before, obviously has never had any hand plane instruction, just did it the same way I did? In other words, they made it work. Because they had a piece of equipment that was brought up to snuff. It was ready to be used, properly sharpened, well tuned. My point is, if you have really good equipment, chances are you're going to be able to use it with a much higher level of precision than you would otherwise. So this is coming off awful lot like a commercial, but so what? When we sell planes, they are ready to be used. They're as if you took them off my bench, only I just sharpened them. When we sell chisels, saws, the saw is ready to go from the box to cutting dovetails. I can't think of any, the shooting, everything we sell is, if it costs more, that's why. Because we prep it to make sure that it's ready to be used. Get good equipment. You won't regret it. Our famous motto, buy once, cry once. Next, Frick. What was that question? Oh, that was about end grain, not being able to pull up a shaving.
Jim Donald in Killeen, Texas.
Hi, Jim.
I have your shooting board, but the MDF corners are all banged up from rough use, and now that corner interferes with the flat plane ramp. How's the best way to fix the banged up corner?
Stop abusing your shooting board.
We're gonna have to repossess it.
Yeah, we might send Ken down there to bring it home. Well, the nice thing about MDF is that you can take some cyanacrylate. Cyanacrylate is super glue for wood, so you want the thin. Where is it? You see it out on my bench somewhere? Somewhere in here I have a bottle of thin cyanacrylate. That's the tight bond version. And what I would do, if you had smashed up the corner and now it's raised up, I would go in and I would saturate that with cyanacrylate. And when it sets up, it'll be nice and hard. And then you can go in with your chisel, assuming it's nice and sharp, and you can go in and you can just pare that off to bring that back down to the same plane as this. And it won't interfere anymore. The fact that the MDF has been saturated with the cyanacrylate means it'll be nice and strong. Don't drop it again, and you should be good to go. And if it's destroyed, well, RobCosman.com, you have to get yourself a new one. MDF is a wonderful product in its proper application. It makes a lousy boat. If it gets anywhere near water, it's just going to ruin it. And if you drop it, but you know, who is telling us? Oh, Chris is working on. We're looking to make a wood-handled dovetail saw as a standard item, and said somebody dropped it on the ground and it breaks. Well, yeah. If I take this lovely box that I spent hours doing and I dropped it on the ground, it would ruin it. It's not indestructible, so you have to care for your tools. What more can we say about that? Next, Frick.
This one's from Margaret Alvater in the chat.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Rob. How do you feel about miter jacks for making 90 and 45 degree square and donkey ear shooting boards in the vise?
Miter jacks. I don't even know if I know what a miter jack is.
Apparently, it's a replacement for the shooting board.
Yeah, I can't think of it. So I think if she's talking about a donkey, there's a device that would hold your board up like this so that you could plane a 45. Well, what we did is we made one that lays flat. I didn't get a chance to show you. Like this. And there's a surface area here and here that runs on the outside edges of your plane so that you're not digging in. Let me just get this set up. Clamp that in place. And then after you've already come in and made a cut, after you have come in and cut a 45 on there, you can come in and perfect it. Oh, I had all kinds of comments when I did that last time. You go in there and cut that on a miter saw or cut that on the table saw and get the bulk of the 45 off. And then you can come in and you can perfect it with this so that you can get a perfect 45. That's how I cut these miters on small boxes. If it was a big, oh, here, we just go do it. Can't do it on a table saw, but I'll do it on a chop saw. So a chop saw is okay for trim, not okay for furniture, meaning you're not going to get what I would call an acceptable 45. Off of a chop saw.
Luther says a miter jack is a donkey ear that has its own screw system. Don't need the shooting board for it to work. Miter jack and donkey are basically the same thing.
Thank you, Luther. My blade is dull. Well, 32 seconds.
Frick, throw out another question.
I'm out of questions.
Are you out of questions?
Yeah.
Well, here, then I'll give this little lesson.
We're over 2,000 in donations.
Are we?
And it looks like only half of the people hit the like button. So make sure you hit the like button. And
Maybe they don't like us.
well, then they shouldn't be here.
Okay, come over here. Doesn't hurt to every once in a while show this, demonstrate this. So this is my fine stone on this side. This is my coarse stone over here. And we have a couple of different systems, although they use relatively the same equipment. But this is the Sharpening lapping plate, which is flatter than anything. So I go in there and I spend a couple of seconds getting that flat. And then I come over here and I do the same thing, a couple of seconds getting this flat. Keep both stones lubricated. It helps to keep the stone from clogging. I'm going to set the blade down. Need my glasses. Don't be counting 32 seconds because I'm talking to you while I'm doing it. Set your blade down on the primary bevel. Now, actually, when I look at that,
Over to grinding too?
that's time for a new primary. Because you look at how big the secondary has become. Means I'm polishing all of that and I don't want to. But for lack of time, I'm going to find the primary, come up a few degrees, spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds. Feel for a burr. As long as I can feel a burr that goes corner to corner, then I know I've created a new edge, and the burr also tells me that if this is flat and my pressure was uniformly dispersed, a burr running corner to corner tells me the edge from there to there is straight. So these people that always worry about transfer of grit. I'm going to come over to my fine stone. I'm going to do the same thing. Find my primary, come up a little bit higher than the previous stone. I'm actually creating a third or a tertiary bevel. And I'll do the same 10 seconds. I wasn't counting, but we'll say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At the end of 10 seconds, I'm going to maintain everything except I'm going to push a little harder in one corner, and then I'm going to push a little harder in the opposite corner. So what I did is I applied more downward pressure on that corner for 3 seconds, and then that corner for 3 seconds to create a little feathering of the outside corners. Final step is called the Charlesworth ruler trick. So that is David Charlesworth, who passed away almost a year ago. Wow, time flies. And David developed this back in the mid-70s. Set your blade down, elevate it on this side by the ruler. Stay within 1/4 of an inch of the opposite edge. And by moving it along that edge, you create a little tiny back bevel. And that little back bevel prevents you from having to spend a whole lot of time polishing the entire back, only to use a little wee bit right out at the edge. So this has actually been doubling as my hanky. I guess it won't hurt. Put that in place. Now, you want to bring that up to within about a 32nd of an inch of the edge. Snug that up. We got a conversion kit coming soon that you're going to love. Trying to just get rid of some of the almost want to call them irritants that for years we've accepted in our tools. Put that in place. When you set that in, make sure that it sits flat. Put your lever cap on with enough pressure that it'll prevent the blade from moving accidentally, but not so much pressure that I can't make adjustments. Now I can see the blade wipe one way. There's less blade on this side than there is on that side, so I'm going to push my lateral adjustment toward the high side and get that blade parallel to the sole. Turn my very easy to turn adjustar to pull that blade in. And then when it is, I can now come in here. Now, I was just noticing that, see how that's rocking? So that's why. That's the surface that wasn't, planed. Wasn't sawn either. So let me just straighten that out. If you don't, then you don't have a good solid footing up against the fence. And you don't want this thing to rock on you while you're trying to cut that miter.
Notice what that plane does with the shavings?
Curls.
Yeah.
Okay, put this in place. A little more blade.
Last chance to get your name in the draw, everybody. We're over 2,000 in donations.
Wait.
So when I get a full length shaving, then I know, and that comes right up tight to there, so that does a pretty good job of protecting it over here. But now that's a nice clean surface, and it'll give me a nice glue joint when it goes up against the other piece. And if I needed to adjust it, I would put a piece of tape on one end or the other so that I could either raise it up this way slightly to alter the angle, or raise it up that way slightly to make it more acute. But there you get nice, clean. The blade was, I hope if that was worth doing, because what you should have noticed is how much better it performed when I went in and sharpened it. You know, you get nice end grain shavings that are, you know, nice and clean. Sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. Boy, the whole thing revolves around a sharp edge. Any final questions, Frick?
Nope.
That was the last one? You just want to go home?
Yep.
We have a
Well, it takes you 10 minutes to wrap up, so.
we have a video to shoot, remember?
Yep.
So anybody, any shout outs left? Said hi to Lynn and Angie. Oh, Kim, let me tell you this. So there's always a forgotten somebody. And our combat wounded vets deserve everything we can do for them. Think about what they've done. But combat wounded vets always have another casualty, and that casualty is the family. These guys come home with all kinds of baggage, and the wife who's left trying to hold everything together amidst this storm that continues at home is really deserves as many Purple Hearts as the spouse is awarded. So Kim has recognized that, and she is in the process of putting together the Yellow Ribbon Project. I hope I got that right. And that's going to be a program, again, involving handwork to help wives of combat wounded vets. She's just in the process of getting this off the ground. And Kim is an excellent crafts. Do you have to say craftswoman, or can we just say craftsman? Huh? No, she's beyond that. She's not just technical. She has the eye for it as well. So this is the bag that I had her. I said, make me please, a patriotic bag. And the majority of our audience is in the U.S., so don't be offended if you're Canadian. She can do a Canadian one. Now, I don't, unlike Super Dave, I don't carry a handbag around. But if I did, this is what I would carry. And if you go in and you know anything about craftsmanship, and you can look at the stitching, and you can look at the way things are put together, and you can tell, okay, so this was done well. So this is one of the many bags that Kim's makes. Her business name is Snippets and Stitches. So snippetsandstitches.com. So Kim is part of a business group that we have that we follow Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich as the kind of the outline of what we do. And Kim is included in our prize manufacturers. So if you're female or if you're male that wants to get your wife something really nice, or give something to your wife that you should really like, you may be able to draw for one of those. All right. Am I done talking?
Yep. So we're giving away two
prizes. So we got to give away 3 dead cats. And 3 dead cats. I want to give away one of Jesse's. We'll give away one since we're only at 2,000. And then we'll give away 2 big prizes. So let's do the dead cats first, Frick.
All right, a second. I got to switch my screen here. Okay. Dead cat number 1
is going to, drum roll,
Frank Papura in West Virginia.
Hey, Frank, West Virginia. Yep, you need it. Congratulations. Let us know the size and where we're sending it, and Gina will take care of you.
Chad Iverson in Wisconsin's winning the next one.
I recognize that name. Chad in Wisconsin, he definitely needs it. They get a lot colder than we do. These are good down to about minus 15 Celsius.
And Andrew Paterson in New York.
Andrew. So all 3 are in climates that'll need it. Congratulations, boys. Now let's give away one of Jesse's cell phone stands, which is very well crafted. Jesse Roofenge is an excellent craftsman. He gets it. He understands it. I've seen his work. He actually does some work for us. And he does it. He follows what I follow, which is do it so you cannot see where it can be improved.
All right, it's going to Ken Shaw in Canada.
Hey, Ken, somewhere in Canada. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. Okay, so I don't remember. We'll do this. We'll give away one from the Burris home and one from the Connor home. So if you win the Burris home, you can have whatever plaque you want, either granite or slate, and Kevin will customize it for you for what you want. It comes with racks, so you can set it. It comes with stands made out of mahogany that you can display it on a tabletop, or Kev will drill it and send you a little kit to mount it on the wall. We have one that has our mission statement in both rooms. And then we'll give away a prize from the O'Connor home, and you'll have your choice of either a shave brush, a dagger, or one of Kim's creations handbag.
All right.
So let's do Kev Burris's first.
Winner is Dean Smithman in Wolverhampton, United Kingdom.
Oh, Dean. Congratulations. We get a lot of people from the UK winning prizes.
All right. And the last one?
Yeah.
O'Connor winner is going to William Mason in Ohio.
Hey, William. Choice is yours, brother. Okay. Thank you. Big shout out to all our supporters. Our first class is the middle of April. So everybody's been notified. The class is full on the civilian side. We are anxiously awaiting the completion of our rooms, so the vets will be able to stay right here on site. And we will be back here in 2 weeks. Is that correct? Frick?
Yeah.
Give me that. Well, Frick's not working anyway. He's taking the next 8 months off.
No, that's not true.
How many months? 8 years.
No.
He's on paternal leave.
Parental leave, yes.
Yeah. How long?
I don't know yet. Right now it's April.
I think you said August.
No, I haven't made that decision yet.
Oh, wait a minute. This is okay. Anyway, Frick will be here. We'll all be here in 2 weeks' time. Bring a friend on. Not sure what the topic will be. It'll be notified. Make sure you register for our newsletter, and also follow us on Instagram and Facebook
And TikTok.
and TikTok.
Yep.
We do 3 videos each week on those ones. Thanks for your support. We'll see you. Have a good night.